Hey, it's Mike Hambright with FlipNerd.com. Welcome back for another exciting expert interview where I interview successful real estate investing experts and entrepreneurs in our industry to help you learn and grow. If you haven't checked out the new FlipNerd.com yet, please go check it out. We've got the most powerful platform in existence for real estate investors where you can find wholesale deals, find vendors in your market, build community, learn a lot of stuff, and watch hundreds of great shows like this. So go check it out, FlipNerd.com. Today I'm joined by Chris Bruce. He's a real estate investor. He's a fellow podcaster, a mentor, and a coach. And Chris's claim to fame is he's actually a virtual wholesaler that invests in multiple markets, which is becoming more and more popular. And he's also a big believer in using virtual assistants and outsourcing parts of his business. And today we're going to talk about what it takes to run his operation, how he's able to do this, and get some lessons in there for those of you that might be interested in doing the same thing. Before we get started with Chris Bruce, though, let's take a second and recognize our featured sponsors. RealtyMogul.com is an online marketplace for real estate investing, connecting borrowers and capital from accredited and institutional investors. Get a rehab loan fast and close in as little as 10 days. Rates start as low as 9%. We'd also like to thank National Real Estate Insurance Group, the nation's leading provider of insurance to the residential real estate investor market. From individual properties to large-scale investors, National Real Estate Insurance Group is ready to serve you. Please note, the views and opinions expressed by the individuals in this program do not necessarily reflect those of FlipNerd.com or any of its partners, advertisers, or affiliates. Please consult professionals before making any investment or tax decisions, as real estate investing can be risky. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show.
Man, Mike, I appreciate you having me here, man.
Yeah, great. So we just coming off of Memorial Day weekend here, and it looks like you and I both are still wishing it was the weekend a little bit, but
yeah, I got to get back into work mode.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm glad you're here. So, before we kind of get started, virtual wholesaling is becoming more and more popular right now, and it's kind of enabled by a lot of technology changes over the past few years and stuff that you do now that none of us could have done even a few years ago. So, right. I'm excited to learn more about kind of your operation and what you do. But for those that don't know you, maybe take a few minutes and tell us about you and how you got into real estate investing and how you got to where you are now.
Sure, definitely. Well, Mike, I can tell you, I was working a job I was working Bank of America. They used to actually be countrywide loans. Okay. And so I was involved in the real estate, I guess you can say, part of the business, somewhat working with the loan originators and stuff. And I was just tired of working, man. I was working there for 3 years and I was bored, and I was, happened to just say there's got to be something else. So I just started to
It's got to be a better way.
It's got to be a better way to make money. So I got online. I got to doing some research. I came across a local guy here in the Tampa market that was advertising a course, and he was showing all these big checks. And I'm like, wow, this is like more money than I make in a year. He's made that in like 2 weeks. Yeah. So I went ahead and I invested some money into the course. And
so what year was that?
This was 2009.
Okay.
So this was right after the market crashed. There was a lot of foreclosures on the market, and the course actually was on flipping REOs.
Okay.
So I had no idea or about bank-owned loans or anything like that. I didn't have any money. My credit was shot because I'd actually bought a house back in 2006 that got foreclosed a year later. So, I was like, okay, this sounds legit. This sounds like something I can do. And he's actually in my own backyard doing this.
Right.
So I went ahead and invested in the course. I got started. I can tell you, Mike, man, it was a hard road. I actually went and put 26 deals under contract, and none of them closed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And those were short sales or?
They were all REOs.
Okay.
I was just, putting offers in with the banks and different realtors and agents. And I was always making a mistake. Either I was, bidding too high. I was getting the offer accepted too high. I was getting in the area nobody wanted to buy in. Just making all type of mistakes. Yeah. But it took that 27th one. I finally got it and got the offer accepted at a good price. I found a buyer, double closed on it. And then from there, I was like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. It takes that first one to kind of light your fire, right, and just get going. Yeah. Well, hey, before we move forward, I want to talk about that a little bit because I know you on your podcast, you talk a lot about how to go from a newbie to start doing some volume and achieving some success. But I think a lot of people think that real estate investing is easier than it is. And I say this all the time. I think that there's a really high failure rate in real estate investing, and that's because a lot of people kind of defeat themselves. They just give up too early.
Definitely.
And I don't know if I've ever said this, publicly before on the podcast, but when I started investing, I was part of a system. I was spending money on advertising. I rented an office. I had an admin. Like, we were getting serious about it, and it took me 4 months to buy my first house. It took a while. It just takes that learning curve. It takes some follow up, like those old leads coming back into play.
Right.
And there's things like that. So maybe take a few minutes and talk about that persistence that it takes to kind of get up over the hump.
Yeah, definitely. It's just, you got to get your momentum going, with anything, is that if you look at somewhat like a LeBron James, sometimes he'll go out on the court and, he might miss a few shots, but once he gets that momentum going, once the shot goes in, it's just things start rolling in. So as real estate, when you're getting started, it's going to seem like it's a little hard. And I can tell you that there is going to be some challenges that, everyone has to go through entering real estate investing, but you have to have the mindset that you're going to eventually accomplish that goal, whatever it is that you set out to be, whether that's flip that first deal and move on to 3 to 5 deals a month or 10, 15 deals a month, whatever. But you have to be persistent in it. You can't have a give up attitude. You really have to. I can tell you that for me, I read a lot of books. I had a lot of personal development, and this really helped me out for my mindset. So that way, when I was making those mistakes, I could keep them going. So that's something that I would tell everybody else as well, is that as you're training and you're out there taking action towards, investing in real estate, also train your brain as well. And that'll help.
Yeah, the mindset is such an important part of this business. And unfortunately, it's pretty common for people's friends and family and those you've surrounded yourself with to tell you that you're crazy for doing what you're doing.
Definitely.
And then it'll get to a point where people will say, well, can you show me how to do that too? Exactly. That's just the reality is it's hard to get support when you're starting off as a real estate investor, because a lot of people say, I don't know your exact situation, but they're like, oh, you have this great job with Bank of America. Mm-hmm. It's like, but just because you have a job doesn't mean you're successful. It's like you may be miserable there, or you may lose your job. You never really know. So I think a lot of people don't really understand the mindset of an entrepreneur, and just the fact that you get to a point where you're like, I have to go do this. I have to find a way to support myself and be self-sufficient and not rely on somebody else. So it's hard to get support a lot of times when you're starting off. So anyway, thanks for sharing go ahead.
Yeah. People just like comfort, Mike. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And so, going into that unknown area where you have to make a deal happen and you really don't know when it's going to happen, how much you're going to make, that's what a lot of people fear. So it's just happen to become comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And you and I both know, after you do that first deal or two, even if you had some failures before that, then once you've seen it work, then you're like, you learn a lot. I mean, the learning curve is really steep at the beginning, right? You learn a lot, and you learn a lot, probably more than anything, about what not to do. But those are often more important lessons than, what to do.
Right.
So you don't have to repeat those mistakes again. So awesome. So you started doing some REOs, and of course in Florida, the market's changed quite a bit over the past 6 years since you've been doing this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So you went from REOs to that kind of, a lot of that stuff drying up, right?
Yeah, because as a lot of people start investing in REOs, there's a lot of more investors came on the market, and then you had these big hedge funds with millions and billions of dollars coming in buying bulk packages of REOs. It really, left not too much inventory for investors like myself and other people as well. So I had to make that transition on finding private homeowners and investing and buying real estate from private homeowners that are in a situation that they're motivated and want to sell.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at what point did you decide to start going into multiple markets? Because I know a lot of investors that I know, we know a lot of the same people that do virtual investing on a larger scale. They just, it was just another way to diversify. They just said, my market's competitive, or there's only so much volume I can do here, so I'm going to kind of cast a wider net, and kind of maybe talk about why you went into multiple markets and why you think that makes sense.
Yeah, well, it's crazy because I actually, before I ever, excuse me, did a virtual deal, I had a guy that reached out to me and he asked me to coach him. And I was kind of reluctant at first because he lived in New Zealand and he wanted to invest in South Florida. And I'm like, I really don't know how to teach you how to do this, but we're going to show you what I've been doing in my market. So long story short, he closed his first deal and made a nice amount of change. And I saw that if I could coach this guy to do what I just did, but he did it thousands and thousands of miles away, why couldn't I do the same?
Yeah.
And so that's when I said that let me try a different market outside of my market. And that's when I started going into different markets and seeing that, wow, I could actually do this in virtual markets and run the same operation pretty much how I have in Tampa, Florida.
Yeah. Yeah. And what, I guess if, so I had somebody on the show recently that invests virtually, but they were in a really small market. So their pain was they were in a market of, 50,000 people or something. So they pretty much had to go somewhere else or move.
Right.
In a market like Tampa, I don't know what Tampa is, probably at least 4 million people, right? So what, and there's probably lots of opportunity in Tampa. There's obviously a lot of investors there. Kind of talk about how it makes sense to diversify and go into other markets, even when you seemingly have a lot of opportunity at home.
Yeah, another thing too that what I can tell you that I've learned as well from going into virtual markets too is good, especially of course if you have a competitive market, you have a lot of investors,
Yeah.
and again to diversify. But what I've learned, Mike, as well too, is that what it does for you is, a lot of times we like to do and we everything in our business. We want to be the manager, the technician, and the business owner.
Yeah.
But going virtual forces you to hire people. It forces you to work with other people.
Yeah.
It forces you to really think like a business owner because you're not physically there. And so that's what it did for me, was that it put that mindset in my business that, you know what, I need to bring in people to help me out. And yes, I might not make 100% of that deal, but however, I'm feeling more like a business having different people and different parts of the, puzzle coming together to form this deal. And that's what I like about it as well, too.
Yeah, that makes sense. So there have definitely been things that I've done in the past where scaling up or getting bigger in some area allowed me to justify hiring a resource there now, which I couldn't do otherwise. And so it was just like, well, we could grow, but part of the decision was it'll allow me to, add a person that can help manage that and make my life, seemingly we're getting bigger or doing more volume or whatever it is, but it allowed me to make my life easier because then I could justify, plugging in a resource that I couldn't before that. So that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess when you were in Florida, I've heard some other virtual folks that were the type that were very, not that there's a wrong and a right way for sure. I've always been very hands-on where I, go out and look at my deals and things like that. I know there's some people like Joe McCall, I know you know Joe. Yeah. The way he kind of justified virtual is that in his market, he was like, well, I wasn't even going to look at most of the houses in my market. So he just kind of hit him that it doesn't really matter where I'm investing at because I'm not going there anyway. So right. were you kind of hands-on in your market before? Or were
No, I was still hands-on in my market. But I guess for me, it was just that I wanted to be able to I wanted to figure out a way that I could actually still make money, but then build the business around my lifestyle. I started, as I started to make more money, I wanted to actually enjoy, and start to travel and things of that sort. But I understood that I still need to have money coming in.
Yeah.
So that's when I was okay, let me first hire somebody like an acquisition manager to actually go out and look at the properties, get the pictures of them, send them to me. And I had a certain structure of, what they have to do when they send the pictures, how many photos, things of that sort.
Yeah.
So it wasn't something that, again, that was things that I was doing on my own. But then I realized, like, this is not the highest and best use of my time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a struggle because I think a lot of real estate investors we tend to be very conservative from the standpoint of overhead, like ramping up, adding overhead, stuff like that. And that's why I think a lot of people tend to do so much themselves because they don't want to add that overhead.
Yeah.
And what they end up doing is creating a job for themselves instead of a business. And they're the bottleneck on everything. And so I've felt that pain many times in my businesses, so I can understand. But I think until you make that mindset that, yes, I'm going to add overhead, but it's going to allow me to, enjoy my life more or scale up or whatever it is.
Right.
You maybe have just created another job for yourself.
Yeah, it really helps you to grow. One thing that I've read in books, I can't think of the name of that exact book. But anyways, it was basically that you should any type of task you want to do it maybe 1 to 8, 10 times maximum, and then try to outsource it or put it into some type of system or something that it can be delegated.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk a little bit about that. I know so talk about how you scaled up and, what, maybe even if you can share what your team looks like now and kind of how you got there and maybe some of the challenges you had. And then we'll kind of talk about, if you had it to do over again, how you would maybe do it differently. Cause I'm sure you learned some lessons along the way.
Oh, definitely, definitely. So, right now, what I have is I have three virtual assistants, but in my real estate business, I use two of them. I have one that actually answers the calls. So pretty much what we have is we have our calls. They don't go to any live agents or anyone taking any calls live, but they actually go into our Google Voice, and then from there, it's 24-hour answering voicemail. And we have our VA will get the information, call them, document everything, send it over to me. I have another VA that kind of manages everything else as far as the marketing that goes out. Every single Monday we send out direct mail. So she handles all of the marketing and the contracts and things of that sort. Getting in touch with buyers and stuff, title companies. She kind of like the person that manages everything.
Okay.
And my other VA. And then I have a acquisition manager that actually goes out to take a look at the properties. Now, every now and then I'll go out with my acquisition manager as well to meet with the homeowner, especially if they're extremely motivated and it's in the market where I'm here locally, to get to the property. But the acquisition manager is just basically their job is pretty much to go out to the property, view it, get pictures, video if necessary, put lock boxes on it as well if we're on that. Or pick up the keys from the homeowner. And so that's pretty much what my team looks like right now.
And the markets that you invest, the other markets that you invest in that are outside of yours, they're fairly nearby, so that acquisitions manager can go over to those areas as well.
I have acquisition managers in different areas. So
I
do is, excuse me, just a little tip for everybody. What you can do, even if you don't want to hire specifically acquisition managers, is something I've done. Especially when I first went to Jacksonville market, is I would just put a Craigslist ad for somebody to specifically just take pictures. That's all I would need. Get the pictures of the property or videos. And then from there, I would handle everything else as far as, finding buyers and stuff like that. But I just needed somebody to be my eyes and, and feet on the ground, pretty much boots on the ground.
Yeah. So. And your acquisitions manager is kind of negotiating with sellers and talking to them directly?
No, I would do the negotiation. I do a lot of negotiating on the phone, but that's the reason why I would need the photos and the videos so I can kind of get a virtual, look of what the property looks like, so that way I can be able to negotiate.
Right. I understand. Okay. And in terms of that kind of structure, so talk a little bit about letting calls go to voicemail versus like taking them live. I mean, it's easier that way. It seems like you would miss out on some hot leads or whatever, but kind of talk about why you do it that way.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. I haven't tried, to be honest with you. I've never tried to actually take live calls.
Okay.
Besides when I first started, they were coming to my cell phone.
Yeah.
But what we do is that with Google Voice, we do have calls that are missed, but my virtual assistant will actually go in and for every missed call, we'll call them back until we get them.
Okay.
So a lot of people, our voicemail is pretty short, precise. We don't have a long voicemail. So it's not something that they're sitting for a minute, 2 minutes for them to hear what I have that, say before they can leave a voicemail. But most people generally leave a voicemail. We do have a few people that might not want to talk to an answering machine and that they won't, but it does show up as a missed call. And so my virtual assistant can go in there and call them back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And your VAs, are these, where are they based out of?
They're out in the Philippines.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And so I guess now that you have been doing this for several years and kind of the same structure, are there things that what are some of the lessons you learned, over time that you would do differently, that you did differently the first time around, I guess? In terms of the structure of your team, I guess.
Okay. As far as the structure, I mean, I would have definitely hired acquisition managers. Yeah. And the way that we have the communication between me and my virtual assistant. We actually use Podio. And so just being able to have everything documented from the communications of what they've done inside of our CRM, everything being updated from the call they just got off of to where we're at on the deal, whether it's a contract pending or stuff.
Yeah.
I wish that I would have done that a little bit more, more structured. I was kind of all over the place, and I really was, didn't have any documentation. So there's been a time where, excuse me, I had to let go of one of my virtual assistants, and not having that documentation hurt me because I had to go back over and train a whole another VA, not having that documentation to record it.
Yeah, and I think with systems like different CRMs and stuff like that, they've just gotten so much more prevalent and over the last few years. I mean, I know even when we started, we're really systems heavy as well. But the first few years, we were manila envelopes and legal pads and all that junk. And yeah, you're right. If you can't find one of those folders or something, and everything's lost, right? Yeah. So systems is a big thing that you've learned, and it's gotten a lot better. And there's tons of CRMs out there, and even free or low cost ones. Mm-hmm. And so, how about in terms of how you talk about how you train your VAs and how you kind of train your team to follow your systems?
Yeah, definitely. What I do is that we'll spend before they actually go out to start working. We actually have a lot of videos we documented. Sometimes what I'll do as well is that when I'm training them on a live training, say I'm going Skype to Skype, I'll record that.
Yeah.
And as I'm training them and documenting everything, or we're going through the system, they'll be able to get that recorded video to be able to watch again. And so that way I can bring someone else in if they were to leave. So we have ScreenFlow is another program I use on my Mac. Some people use Camtasia, and I record different things that I'm doing on my computer to bring them in. When it comes to taking calls, what we'll do, I'll get on the phone and do some live calls to let them kind of hear in of how the questions and everything is based. And we have, for the CRM, pretty much everything is pretty self-explanatory what questions need to be asked.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, so talk a little bit about, so with your acquisitions manager, so they're kind of helping across multiple markets, and then if you need kind of boots on the ground type info, then you're hiring somebody to essentially go look for you, maybe take pictures, and I'm sure there are probably photographers, but you say, hey, when you're there, make sure you check this and kind of use them as an opportunity to not just take pictures, but check on a couple things maybe, or.
Yeah, definitely. I'll give them certain instructions, like say, for instance, I want them to take 2 photos in every single room. I want them to actually, when they're outside, to take a photo of the house, front, turn right to take the area, the neighborhood as well, and turn left as well, across the street. So there's certain different things that I'll tell them exactly what I want besides the pictures, and just kind of some things that I tell them to look for, roof issues, things like that, that they might not know to look for.
Right.
And so that's kind of what, I'll train them. And then also, Mike, when I'm going to virtual market, I typically always have somebody, whether it's a wholesaler, 9 times out of 10 it is, of somebody else investing in that market. So that way I'm not going blind in the market, don't have anything. I have a wholesaler that I have some type of relationship with that has some buyers. So if I get my boots on the ground, actually he'll take a look at the photos, and I can get with them and either do a joint venture with them, or they can kind of help me out in the market if I need MLS access to from running comps and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, I see. So talk a little about when did you start kind of virtually investing? Was that wasn't right at the beginning, right? I mean,
no, definitely not.
Took you a few years, yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't until 2011 was my first virtual wholesale deal.
Okay.
It was crazy, Mike, because the deal closed. Well, no, I'm not gonna say it closed. The deal with the buyer that he accepted what I was asking him to pay. He accepted the offer as soon as I walked into my hotel room in Toronto. It was crazy. Now, the deal actually did go to the closing table the Monday when I was flying back. So when I flew back, I actually had a check to go pick up. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting how much technology has changed. Because I know, like I said, I started about a year before you, I guess, so 2008. So at that time, we were all paper. We were manila folders, file cabinets full of folders. spreadsheets, like tracking stuff in spreadsheets, which is crazy. But my buyers, my sales guys would actually physically come into my office every morning and like pick up their folders for the day and like go out on sales calls effectively. And now they don't come into the office ever. We just use iPads, and they can leave a house and put pictures and information right into, our CRM and Dropbox and all those things. And it's just a different world now. I mean, it's, signing contracts with DocuSign and other tools. And, I haven't been to a title company in years, and it's just a whole different world now.
Yeah. That's a good thing about the internet, man. It's just really, since it evolving so much. I mean, this is like the best time that you can really have a virtual business.
Yeah.
And like you said, don't have to go to a title company. You can have it wired straight to your account, check in the mail, however you would like it.
Right.
I just love this business, man.
Yeah. Well, tell us about tell us about your podcast and some of the stuff that you focus on there.
Yeah, definitely. Podcast is called Escape the Newbie Zone, and I pretty much titled that because as you're starting off in real estate investing, you're what a lot of people call a newbie. So it's just pretty much we've had this podcast for about a little more than 2 years, and we've interviewed different investors and guests on the show. Mike, I got to get you on the show as well.
Yeah.
And we've pretty much again just kind of go into the background and blueprint of kind of different other investors, businesses, and how they kind of escaped that newbie zone and got to their systems in place and start running their business. So that's pretty much what the podcast is for newbies that are trying to get that first deal done, or whether it's a wholesale or rehab, but going from that newbie zone and then actually, getting to a seasoned investor.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, in my experience, even seasoned investors, I think I usually give people that I mentor and coach, I usually tell them to do this like, a few times a year. Just pretend like you're a newbie and just like think about the basics and try to get back to basics. Because what happens is, we all start to develop these bad habits over time, or get overly creative or whatever it might be. And I think even if you're a seasoned investor, sometimes it's good to just think about how to get back to the basics, because sometimes there's such basic things that when you hear somebody say it, you're like, man, I used to do that. Why'd we stop doing that?
Stop doing it. Yep. Yeah. It's something as simple as following up. It's like some people, they'll send out mailers or whatever, and then they'll go to do something else, and they forget that they should have followed up every 30 days.
Yeah.
It's right. It's some of the simple things that you just forget.
Yeah. Hey, so how do folks find your podcast? Where do they go?
They can go to escapethenewbiezone.com. Okay. Again, that's escapethenewbiezone.com, and you can go ahead and find the podcast on the blog. It's on iTunes as well too.
Okay, great. Hey, Chris, any kind of we have just a couple minutes left here. Any kind of final thoughts on advice you could give to people from the lessons you've learned, and maybe some advice that you would give to people that are looking to either get started or looking to, maybe start investing virtually and get out of one market?
Definitely, I would tell you guys is really just educate yourself. Listen to different podcasts. Like Mike's Flip Nerd podcast, really stay in tune of the market. If you're new, I would tell you just as much as you're investing in your education, guys, get out there and really take action. One of the things that I fell victim to, and I'm pretty sure a lot of other people, is that you start to look for information and you're all over the place, and you're learning. You're trying to get a master's degree in wholesaling or a master's degree in rehabbing, when this is not the case, guys. You just got to go out there, take the education that you have, start to actually put out action, and then you'll go ahead and you'll get that first deal done, and you'll be able to grow your business eventually. So just take the information you get, run with it. Don't sit on it. Again, don't try to get a master's degree in something. Just go out there and take massive action. Yeah,
a lot of that education is going to come from kind of on the job, right? Just doing it and learning. Yeah, you can't learn this stuff in books usually. So, yeah, awesome. Well, Chris, hey, thanks for your time today. Glad you're here, and we're going to put a link down for Escape the Newbie Zone to your podcast and to your site for those that want to learn more down below the video here. So, okay. Chris, thanks again, my friend. Thanks for being here with us today.
I appreciate it, Mike.
Good luck to you, and have a good day.
You too.
All right. Are you a member of FlipNerd.com, the most robust real estate investing platform in existence, where you can find off-market wholesale deals and great vendors literally in your market? You can get access to advice from experts and learn about local clubs and events right in your backyard. If not, please visit FlipNerd.com and register for a free account. You can register in less than a minute. It's pretty much the coolest site that's ever existed in the real estate investing industry. So get on over to flipnerd.com.